I'm Daniel Kopp, certified financial planner and financial therapist, and welcome to the Widow Life and Money podcast. As the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, I know that all too well that grief changes everything. My passion and purpose now is to take what I've learned as a widower coupled with financial planning and advice to be a help to you in your own unique grief journey. In this episode, I'm joined by Andi Wren, a fellow advocate for Gold Star widows. Andi's story is rooted in personal experience, having traversed the path of loss herself. She's now committed to helping others who find themselves in similar situations. Together, we explore the complexities of military benefits, the emotional burden that financial choices can bring after a loss, and the undeniable importance of building a support network. Whether you're just starting on this journey or standing alongside someone who is, this discussion is designed to provide both practical insights and encouragement. Thank you for being a part of this community. Let's walk this path together with shared stories and genuine support as we aim for a future filled with hope and stability. Welcome, Andi. I'm so glad that you're here to talk about planning for Gold Star widows and your personal experience as a widow yourself and all the work that you do in this space to help people. So thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise today.
It's always good to talk to you.
I want to start with how you got into this space. Why did you start helping widows? How is it that you have had some personal experience in there? Whatever you feel like sharing to help kind of set the stage for your personal journey would be helpful, I think.
Well, I was managing a large government contract in personal finance. So we did have a lot of people who either previously or did currently work with survivor outreach in the Army space. And so I had a lot of friends that worked there. But then I became a military widow. My husband passed away 8 months after medical retirement and 27 years of active duty. And I went to some of those people that I knew and said, "Hey, I know a lot, but I want to make sure what do I need to know that I don't know or that I might not think about?" And so that whole experience of like my husband was suicidal for 3 years, so I was already grieving, right? I was grieving the loss of that person that I knew cuz he had changed. And then when he passed, I was, kind of shocked because it was like all of a sudden, and it
Yeah.
wasn't because of suicide. It was he got lost on our forestry land and passed away from the heat and never making him back to the car for a drink of water, all that good stuff. So that is how I experienced a lot of the things that I had been talking to people about financially, personally. And I think when you go through things personally, it kind of brings more clarity to what you're seeing and you learn some things that maybe you didn't know before. So I learned a lot through the process of working with my casualty affairs officer. Um, Great guy. He helped me do all the paperwork, which was fantastic. I think it was about 5 or 6 months later, I got involved with TAPS. So they assigned me a mentor, sent me a package of stuff, and then I started going to some TAPS events, and then became a mentor. The My mentor went, "Oh my God, I think you should be a mentor, not a mentee." So I ended
Mm.
up being a mentor pretty quickly into the process. Um, so that's kind of how I got into helping people in the field. And then all the financial professionals that I've worked with that heard my story about all the stuff, because there was 2 years of horrible stuff that happened after my husband died. In fact, I know a lot of military spouses that go through some kind of lawsuit or financial trauma after somebody passes away. And so, a lot of people knew my story and what I've been through, and they would send people to me when somebody would pass away and say, "Hey, can you help them through this process?" So that's kind of how I got started working with people.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much
It is.
there
There's a
beyond
lot
the
there.
story, like everyone's story in some ways, but also in your case, you had been in a helping profession before you translated it to this skill set. I previously interviewed for another podcast where we talked more about your career path in the professional space, the financial counseling space. I'm curious just if you could reflect on how you saw that work translating over into this side of helping.
Well, they are very tied because there's so much that even like you think about active duty, retired, National Guard and Reserve, there's a lot of differences. And thankfully, in the program that I ran, we supported active duty, National Guard, and then veterans up to 120 days after they leave service, basically. So I've been helping in all of those areas. So I knew a little about a lot. Um, but the whole money piece, there's just so many laws. And I, thankfully, part of my job was making sure that all those people who worked for me knew all the current laws and all the
Right.
changes in the
Yes.
laws. And so I was up on all of that because I taught it all the time to the financial professionals that worked for me. So that piece, it's definitely ingrained in what you go through. There's so much money stuff that comes up when you lose somebody.
Yeah.
How am I going to pay for this? Where do I want to live? Like there's so many things, so many pieces related to money.
I wanted to focus on that a little bit because you came into this experience, your personal experience of grief and loss and becoming a widow, with a lot more financial knowledge than perhaps most people
Yeah.
and the professional expertise. And yet, I know because I've heard part of your story before, it was still challenging, maybe in some ways overwhelming. So, for somebody like you who's done so much of it, how would you encourage, maybe support, or at least counsel somebody who is feeling even more overwhelmed or drowning in the midst of it? What did you learn from your personal experience that you use in that way to help others going through this loss and the mountain of paperwork that comes with it in many ways?
Well, I think having professionals that do this stuff for a living is very important that are vetted. You have a lot of government programs out there to help military survivors. And, there's VSOs, there's your casualty affairs officers and some casualty affairs officers or CAOs or whatever they are with your branch of service. They have a varying degree of experience and knowledge. I
Yeah.
had one who was fantastic. And actually, I had him come teach a class with me for my employees on that, which was really fun. Um, I almost forgot what our question was. Okay, so the financial professionals on the installation, they're
Yeah.
there for them, and a military survivor, Gold Star family especially, they get to use financial services on the installation for their life, and that is a wonderful benefit. Um, they're not going to tell you what to do with your money or where to put your money, but they're going to be a hand that can hold, you know, your, I don't know, make you feel comfortable and knowledgeable and help you walk through the processes that you need to go through so that you're not, um, I like to say sometimes people make some dumb mistakes with their money right away. And, like, oh, I'm just going to buy a new house. And then they don't have a way to pay the taxes or insurance or all that stuff
Mm.
down the road or maintenance. And they don't have a plan yet. So, sometimes people do things too quickly with the money that they get. And it can be really helpful to have professionals, whatever professionals are available to you, talk to them all. And if you don't like one, talk to another one so
Yeah.
that you find the one that fits you.
I like what you said there because there's so many things that overlap. There's layers to the challenge of grief. We haven't explicitly mentioned it, but brain fog is just a huge component.
It
Academic
is.
research has shown just how overwhelming that was. My personal experience. Like you, I was the main kind of household chief financial officer. I call it the CFO of our household. But after Sarah died, it was still extremely difficult for me even to do some of the more simple things because it just your mental load, the taxing of grief just can be overwhelming. So bringing in extra support and not being afraid to ask for help, or if the help you're getting is maybe not ideal, continue to search for that. But at the same time, recognizing that that is a lot of work, that is a lot of stress. So also thinking about prioritization. A lot of times with my clients, we'll segment decisions into what we call the now, the soon, and the later buckets.
I love your
You know,
buckets. Yeah, that's great.
because some stuff has to get done now, right? There's forms that have to be filled out, stuff that has to be turned into the VA, but many things can wait just a little bit, right? Especially when everything can be so overwhelming already. So when you think about your personal experience, what were some of those things that you were able to push off, and how did that work out for you where you weren't having to feel all that overwhelm at the beginning?
Well, one of the things that I had some things that I had to do that were dependent on the death certificate, the final death certificate. And that took probably 8 months for the final death certificate. So that kind of got to be one of the things that I could take my time and get the paperwork done that I needed to get done, so that, because there's a form you can fill out if somebody's, qualifies to extend their SGLI for 2 years after a medical retirement, or, certain circumstances. Like, you can look that up on the VA website. But my husband qualified for that. He had the paperwork on his desk. He had me do all the stuff. He just hadn't given me that paper yet to fill out.
Mm, yeah.
And so I had to do it post mortem. And so I filled that out, but I didn't do it right away. It was one of those things that, I think it was January or February that I did it. He passed away in September. But I had somebody from the Wounded Warriors for the Air Force. It's not the Wounded Warrior Project, but the Air Force in San Antonio gave me a call one day in January and said, "Hey, are you getting your SBP? Because we don't see that you're getting it." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm getting that." "Well, do you have your SGLI?" And I explained the situation, that my casualty affairs and officer and I were going to write a letter. And so they ended up helping me write the letter. They submitted it for me. And then when the death certificate happened, it automatically happened that I got the life insurance. So
Yeah.
that was really helpful. So right now I have to decide, some things, right? Like the funeral and where he wants to be buried, and, all that stuff, right? That's immediately happening. About a month and a half after he passed away, I ended up having a lawsuit situation. Um, Thankfully, I had SBP, because my SBP actually is what I lived off of while I used my whole entire salary to pay for my attorney for almost 2 years. And then,
Wow.
um, and then another thing that's like down the road, like, you have a year after you receive your life insurance to roll that money over into the Roth, the HEART Act, right?
Yeah.
So I knew I had the time to do that. So I did take a couple months before I got that set up, and just to make sure I knew what I wanted to do with the money. And the nice thing is, you can put it in there and let it sit. Don't just leave it in the mutual fund, though, people.
Yeah.
But you can let that sit there, and then if you need the money, you can take it out because of the HEART Act. You just file a form, and I won't go into the weeds on that one, but you can file a form with your taxes, the 8606. I learned that one as I went through the process, because I ended up taking a little money out after all the lawsuit was done and all that good stuff. So,
I love that you're just talking about the team that surrounded you and helping inform you about benefits. Um, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's
yeah.
not a reflection on you or anyone else who might be going through that situation. For better or worse, there's a host of benefits and the rules that govern them and the specific statutory requirements and some programs administered by the VA versus DFAS and things like that. So they don't always talk to each other. You've referenced a couple of organizations throughout. We're going to have a full list of those in the show notes here and talk more about them here. But yeah, just again, emphasizing the importance of surrounding yourself with qualified, smart professionals who can help go through this process and make sure that you're not missing out on the benefits. So thank you for sharing much of your personal story, Andi. I know that informs your experience. Let's step back and just talk broadly about some of the major benefits that are available for Gold Star widows. And I'll use that term generically here, but of course, we recognize all genders are eligible for that. So, we think about some of the big ones. We've mentioned SBP, Survivor Benefit Plan.
Yep.
So, for someone who's passed away in the line of duty, we'll focus on that in a second, you're going to be automatically eligible for Survivor Benefit Plan. So let's talk about what that is and what it is paid out. It is a taxable benefit. That's going to be different than some of the other ones we talk about. So, how would you explain, or how do you explain SPB to someone who's coming in to you in that initial Gold Star widow? What is this benefit, and kind of broadly, how does it work?
The nice thing about SBP, I think, for people and for them to understand, it's like a continuation of what a retirement paycheck would be. So
Hmm.
if it's a retired person, it's that portion of a retirement check that's paid. But for those who are active duty, they calculate what your amount will be, and then you're paid that for the entirety of your life as a widow or a widower, right? So that's really helpful. They do have the child also option, right? So I think now with the new laws with the SBP DIC offset, I think more and more people are using the SBP for themselves.
Right, taken as the spousal benefit. That was one
Yeah,
of the major changes that had been lobbied by various veteran and service organizations in past several years ago. That now is a huge benefit. Prior to that, whatever amount that the widow would receive by VA Dependency Indemnity Compensation, or DIC, if that was larger, then they would not receive SPB. But now that those offsets have changed, you're eligible for both. So yes, so if somebody dies on active duty, the SPB payment is calculated based on years of service, grade, high 36, and things like that as a calculation. So it's not going to be what the full amount of basic pay would. It's a smaller amount of that. But like you said, it is a life annuity. So as long as you live, subject to certain rules about remarriage, which we may get
right.
to later, that is going to be paid to you. Taxable benefit, inflation adjusted.
I
It
love the
so
inflation
wonderful.
adjusted part of that. That is really helpful. And that's one thing that, you hear people talk about, oh, life insurance versus SBP. I'm like, they're not versus, they're both, right?
Mm,
But
yeah.
also thinking about SBP, some states do not tax SBP. So
Yes.
it's federally taxed, but not every state taxes SBP.
I'm glad you mentioned that caveat, because there are certain states that have specific benefits for military veterans, retirees, and survivors, like you said.
Yeah, and that changed since my husband passed away. I've been working on promoting the whole SBP DIC way before Chris passed away, probably 10 years before he passed away, you know.
Mm,
And so when that change happened, that was really exciting. And then I was like, oh, should I move to a state that doesn't tax that retirement check,
mm,
And then luckily the state I live in changed the rules and no longer tax the SBP payment. So that's really great.
yeah. So we mentioned VA DIC, so the dependent indemnity compensation. So again, automatic eligibility for Gold Star widows in this particular case. The benefit here is fixed based on the year. We won't give specific figures, but you can go look those up
Right.
on the VA website. You also get an additional payment for the first 2 years after the death of the active duty member. And based on children in the household, there's also some additional benefit that may come there. This is a tax-free benefit, so it is not federally taxed. You won't get any tax forms for that. And this is paid from the VA, whereas SPP is paid from DFAS. So you're working with two separate agencies here. My experience over the years working with Gold Star Widows is DIC tends to get paid out faster. That one tends to show up quicker. Not exactly sure of all the logistical reasons behind that, but has that been your experience as well?
Well, since I wasn't an active duty death, I was just right after retirement. That's a little bit more of a situation, because
Right. I mean, as a TAPS
yeah,
mentor
but
and what you've seen working
yeah,
with Gold
yeah,
Star Widows.
yeah. I think, I've seen it happen pretty close proximity to, but yes, it's a lot faster. I
Okay.
mean, when that's an active
Yeah.
duty death. Hmm.
So those are the two main benefits. We've referenced just this idea of line of duty. There are a few circumstances that may create a command investigation. In all my years of working, there's only been a handful of circumstances where there was a line of duty investigation. Sometimes that can be held up based on the circumstances of the death. So if you're in a training accident or just passing away from cancer or some other health consideration, usually it's almost instantaneous versus surrounding circumstances. So was there member
I
off
have
duty? Were they doing
yeah.
something illegal? I'm curious what you have seen.
Well, I was gonna say the one that I think was the most complicated one was somebody who, um, he was rock climbing on a weekend, and so that took a little while to make sure that, because you are 24/7, right? You're in the military 24/7,
Always
so
on duty.
it ended up happening, but that one took a little bit longer than other situations.
Yeah, I didn't see this one personally related by a casualty affairs officer at one point, but many, many, many years ago, there was a young airman who was committing a crime, an armed robbery, and was shot and killed in that, in which case
Oh,
that line of duty determination did come back not. So that spouse, unfortunately, was not eligible for SPB as a result of that. But even in another circumstance, not seen personally, but again, relayed to me, of a young service member riding their motorcycle at a very, very high rate of speed under the influence of alcohol. Command could have gone one way, but they were generous in this particular case, and they found a way to tie it back to a service connected PTSD and still rated it. So, if that is in
mhm,
fact your circumstances, again, lean on the support network around you and
definitely.
get some outside counsel and support. But 9 times out of 10, maybe even 95 times out of 100, it's pretty
Mhm.
much a formality from our experiences there. Let's talk education benefits next. Okay. So,
Yeah.
there's the Gunnery Sergeant Fry Memorial Scholarship and how that works. It's basically a mirror version of the 9/11 GI Bill. So you get all dependents eligibility for that. So surviving spouse and surviving children. Now there comes a unique planning opportunity here where maybe the service member has already transferred the GI Bill. So maybe the spouse and kids already have access to that. So now you have the opportunity to potentially double up or choose between VA Dependents Education Assistance or DEA, Chapter 35 benefit, sometimes called that. So let's talk about what you've seen, Andy, and how you think about that from your hat, both as a professional and having walked with other people through this decision.
Ooh. So I'm in a lot of forums for the military widow and widowers, and I see a lot of people really, if they have the opportunity to do the Fry Scholarship, it seems to be a better option for them. But some people don't have that option, depending on all the circumstances. Um, Chapter 35 pays the person directly that's going to school, and
Yeah.
it doesn't go to the school. And so for some, that works out well. Maybe they're living at home, they have that money that helps pay for things. But I would say the Fry Scholarship is probably the better option for people in most cases. But you can work with the financial professionals on the installation, crunch the numbers, and see which one makes more sense for the program somebody's going into,
Yeah.
whether or not they're part time, full time, all that can make a difference too.
Yeah. The only time that we've seen personally with a client where it made sense for the Gold Star widow to take Chapter 35 DEA, in this particular case, service member died, no children. So surviving spouse already had the GI Bill transferred from the service member. So that commitment had been fulfilled. So to double up would have been two in this case, and overkill based on what this member wanted to actually go and do. So we went ahead and selected for Chapter 35 instead. So she still had
The GI
GI
Bill.
Bill and Chapter 35 now, rather than having two of the same thing.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to go back to school forever, although there are many ways to use it creatively. Not a Gold Star widow, but I've had another client who used it to go get a foreign visa, go to a different country, study in that foreign country, have the residency that goes along with that, and did a master's degree program in something they were interested in, not that they were planning to do a career out of it. So lots of ways to think about
And
how to use
I
it.
actually I've seen some discussion on this, and I was looking into it. That's why I've seen lots of things in the social media groups, um, getting a pilot's license.
Yep,
And so there's certain
certifications. Yep.
ways that you can use that kind of thing to do that. Because I was like, I don't want to get a PhD, honestly. I was like, what do I want to do with mine? So mine's just sitting there doing nothing. But it's interesting to think about. And my daughter and I talked about, oh, maybe I'll do cosmetology school. That could be fun. I could learn something new. So we have looked at lots of different things. Hey, you want to learn to do something new? Go take some classes. Use that chapter 35 or
Yeah, it's
whatever is
very
available
flexible.
to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that illustration there. Okay, so let's also talk about, you mentioned earlier SGLI, so that's the Service Members Group Life Insurance payout, as well as the extra 100,000 death gratuity. So typically that death gratuity is going to get paid out much faster. It's meant to be paid out within the first couple of days after a service member's death is reported, because basic pay and everything else will stop, and sometimes even based on date of death, maybe even pulled back by DFAS. Right,
Yes.
we've seen that happen before. So if you experience that, right, this death gratuity is meant to come in immediately. Now we've also seen circumstances where, because the death gratuity record of who it's paid out to is a different notification than the SGLI beneficiary. So whether that's your case or not, just recognize that if the service member didn't have things updated, whatever's on the VRED, the death gratuity, may be paid out differently. So sometimes it goes to family members. What have you seen in
Well, I
that?
was just going to say, first of all, everybody make sure that everybody's stuff, everybody in the military has their records updated to who they want to receive death benefits or death gratuities, right? So that's that there's some really interesting things there. Um, where you have ex-partners and
Sadly, you do.
girlfriends
Yep.
and parents, not the new wife and kids, and things like that. It can be really traumatic for people to go through that. I recently had somebody who um, lost their life 2 days before their wedding, and
Oh
the
wow.
mom ended up taking some of the SGLI and giving it to the going to be new bride. So
That
that
was
was
generous of her. She's under no requirement to do that.
no, but she felt really bad,
Yeah.
so it was not a pleasant situation. And I was like, "Ooh, we got to look at taxes for this," But
Yeah.
anyway, so it's very interesting um, to see when some of those situations come up because they're very tenuous
Mm-hmm.
and and
Layers.
very layered. Yes, yes,
But you
yeah,
referenced obviously the HEART Act. So this
yeah.
is that ability to take the SGLI proceeds plus death gratuity. So whatever that amount was, if you got paid the full 500,000, it is currently here in 2025, you get the chance to put that plus up to the max amount. So up to currently 600,000. Whenever
Right.
SGLI goes up, the law is written to match that. Now you do not have to put the full amount in, but the law says you have 12 months from the date of receipt of SGLI to deposit up to that full amount in either a Roth IRA or a Coverdell ESA, an education savings account. I've never recommended the ESA based on how flexible
I've
you
never
have
even
with the
heard of
Roth IRA.
anybody doing that.
Yeah, I would never ever recommend that. So I would
Yeah.
always recommend, very rarely in personal finance and financial planning can I say you should always, but in my opinion, you should always put the option into a Roth IRA. Now, we'll have a full link out to a blog I wrote and other resources related to how to the actual logistics of this. If you randomly call up a custodian like Schwab or Fidelity, most of the time the people there are not going to know about that. So there's some specific instructions, and you can reference the IRS pubs that go along with that. But you can put the full amount in, and then obviously the benefit there is tax-free future growth, as well as tax-free withdrawals prior to age 59 and a half of what is called the contribution basis. So if you put in 600,000, that first 600,000 can come out without taxes or penalties prior to age 59 and a half. After 59 and a half is when growth, the earnings that that money makes, can come out. Again, consult a financial and tax professional to help with this if there's specific questions, because sometimes the records don't always reflect, and want to make sure that whatever withdrawals that you're taking are uh, appropriately addressed on your taxes. So that is a huge, huge, powerful benefit, right?
It is. I mean, every financial professional I know in the field that's related to military at all is like, "This is the best benefit we've ever seen."
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful thing for survivors to be able to have that ability to put such a large sum into a Roth at one time.
Because otherwise, if you're just putting it in based on earnings here in 2025, you can put up to 7,000 for most people. Some people can put 8,000 if you're over age 50, but that is 500,000 divided by 70 or 7,000 is 71 years. So it's like lump summing your entire retirement. For most of my clients, especially if they can live off of SPP plus DIC to cover a lot of their living expenses, lumping the death gratuity and SGLI into a Roth IRA pretty much sets them up for future retirement, like never having to put away another dollar alone. Plus, if there's extra resources that come along, like Fry
Right.
Scholarship, covering kids' education, it's amazing. It's so, so helpful.
Yeah, and some states even have education programs for the surviving family members, right? So that's
Yeah.
something to look into too, to
That is
see what
very
your
state
state.
specific and super
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah.
Supplementing and in addition to GI Bill. So yeah, in many cases, undergraduate degrees being able to cover for that, and then saving like GI Bill, Fry Scholarship for higher education, secondary
Yes.
programs, masters, PhD.
Yeah, that can be a really good benefit too.
The only other thing that I will say, just as a quick mention about for when receiving large sums of money, such as SGLI or maybe other life insurance policies, just being aware of the FDIC, so the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation
Oh,
limits,
yeah.
because when you go from married account to single on the bank side, your FDIC limit goes from 500,000 to 250,000.
Yes.
So if you're keeping, you know, 500,000 to a million or beyond in a bank account, technically you might be exceeding that. Now, our recent banking history has shown that in certain cases they'll still backstop it. If you go back a couple of years when we had that go down with a few banks here, but just being aware. So one of my favorite tools to use with this is Max My Interest. It's a software overlay that allows you to link to your primary bank account, put extra money in it at very high yield rates. Currently, right now, amongst the highest that all high yield savings accounts do pay out, and it automatically keeps you under FDIC limits. Another simple thing to do while you're just waiting, again, in that now, soon, and later buckets, is you can just open a simple brokerage account and put it in something like a money market fund while you wait to figure out what's next. But just a small caveat there to be aware of. Hopefully, not a huge risk for most of our listeners, but something to be aware of.
Right.
Okay, so one of the other major benefits for surviving spouses and Gold Star widows and their families is TRICARE, right? So we've talked about a lot of things. Healthcare is probably one of the most underrated, at least from a cost, particularly if those who have never paid for what health insurance and healthcare costs are outside of the TRICARE ecosystem. TRICARE has problems, right? I'm not saying it's perfect, but from a out-of-pocket expenses, it is absolutely one of the best benefits out there. So surviving spouses are eligible for TRICARE for under the standard active duty dependent rates for 3 years from the date of the service member's death. So that's that transitional survivor status. And so cost of TRICARE Prime or of TRICARE Standard, those copays, cost shares stay the same. After that 3 year point, then the surviving spouse switches over to the same cost shares as those of a TRICARE retiree. Okay. So you're still covered under the same benefit. You have the options. The open enrollment period is going to mirror that. The costs just reflect whether you're still on the active duty side versus switching over to what retirees pay. On the dental side, it's fairly similar as well. So again, that premium free coverage for 3 years. After switching over, then it's the eligibility for TRICARE retiree dental program. That is very location specific in my experience, right? Many providers, in my experience, do not take all the TRICARE retiree dental program. So you may find that you just go out and buy your own or even use like a cost share program. So that's what
One
it looks
thing
like.
one thing I'll say about the dental and vision, that I love that you have the 10 options, and what I usually suggest to people is to talk to the dentist that you want to see or you do
Ideally,
go
yeah.
to and find out which of these plans work best for them. Every time I go to my dentist, they say, "You have the best dental insurance I've ever seen."
Yes.
Because the one I have now, and I did the same thing I tell people to do. I said, "Hey, what do you think is a good plan?" And, they can't tell you which one to get, but they can tell you which ones pay on time and they have good experiences with. But they changed from twice a year cleanings to 3 times a year cleanings. So that's a really good thing too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options out there, and find a dental provider that you really love and trust, and then see which plans work for them when you're going to select. That's usually what I tell people.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10, when I'm helping clients evaluate options between TRICARE Prime, TRICARE Standard, I always recommend to go to TRICARE Standard. It's a much, much better experience for most people getting to choose providers, provided they accept TRICARE, and not having to go through the gatekeeper that what we call in the civilian world HMO, Health Managed Organization, where that primary care office and provider has to send all the referrals out. So much better experience. Sounds like that's what you align with
It
as well, Andy.
is. Yes, at first, I was a little upset that I couldn't get Prime because I was just a few miles outside of that region, and I could have gotten a waiver, but I decided not to do it. And I have found that Standard has been so phenomenal, because if I have most of my injuries are orthopedic and I just go straight to the orthopedic person. I've had
Yep.
to go to neurology. I had an issue with something and I got to go straight there and take care of it. I have seen my primary care person once in the last 8 years. So it's fantastic to be able to
Yeah.
go to who you need to see right away.
And that's you don't like your provider, you can just go find another one versus having to go back to the gatekeeper and again get a new referral and go through the whole system. So for listeners, if you've never experienced the difference, I highly recommend it. Check it out. Worst case scenario, you can always switch back the next open enrollment if you don't like it. All right, Andy, a couple other topics as we come here towards the end. Let's talk about VSOs and veteran service organizations, how to find them, what they might do, and how they can be helpful in this process.
Wow, there are a lot of organizations available that have VSOs. Um, I went directly to the county. I did talk to somebody at TAPS first about my situation, and then they said, "This is what we do, and here's what you need to find." And so they suggested some VSOs, and for us, every county has a VSO. Um, we have in our state a Facebook group, and people will say, "Here's the best VSO," or like you can
Yep,
read and learn a little bit about the different VSOs and their people's experience with them. But they're pretty easy to find by doing a search.
yep.
And some are more helpful than others. The last one I went to has not been very helpful. I'm working on something right now. So trying to, find some other help at this moment, actually.
And
Yeah.
just expectation management, right? If someone is claiming to be a VSO, but then they're asking to charge you, your red flag should go up, right? VSOs provide the services at no cost to you.
Yes. Yes. And on back pay, if there's like a back pay issue or something like that, they have a certain percentage that they're allowed, but no more than that.
Right. They're not charging you up front to be able to do some of this stuff as
Right.
they work through. Yeah. Again, just helping to build the team around you to support and encourage and help you through this process. All
Yeah,
right.
and
So the last
if you don't like somebody, find another one. Or if you
exactly.
don't feel like
Yeah.
they're doing the work that they should be doing, find somebody else.
Excellent. So you mentioned about some varying experiences. We talked about like the casualty affairs officer. Some of that varies. Some of the organizations vary. Now, one of the ones in my experience that has some of the best support, and you've referenced it throughout TAPS, the Transition Assistance Program for Survivors. Let's talk a little bit about why people might want to consider getting involved, leveraging some of those resources, and getting connected there.
Well, TAPS has a lot to offer, I think. Um, One, as soon as they find out about an active duty death, they do send information to the surviving families as soon as they can, right? That's really helpful. You get a box with information and reading in it. They will connect you to a mentor. Um, Lots of they try to connect you to a mentor that is similar in circumstance.
Yes.
Um, they have I feel also that they are the most inclusive. So they include engaged partners, for example, or people who
Hmm.
are living together, whereas some other organizations only count people who are married or, you know,
Right.
specific. Like my husband's cousins can come to events
Right.
because they have lost somebody too, very special to them. So they're very inclusive, and I like that a lot. They have all kinds of programming. They have some programs for people under a year. They have some programs that stipulate that they want people to be 3 years or beyond, just because there are different things that we go through at different points and
Oh yeah.
different
Grief journey is
stages in our
different.
grief, right? They have virtual programs, they have in person programs. So I went through the training here to host local events. We have a once a month on a Saturday get together. um, I go to retreats. I've been to three of the cruises. That most of the events are you pay to get there, and then the sponsors pay for the event, like the hotel
Right.
or the activities. The cruise is the only thing right now that is a self-pay activity, but I have found that to be really. I like cruising. I hate cruising by myself. They match you up with a roommate if you want to have a roommate too. That's been really great for me. Although my second one, I had a roommate who their husband had just passed away like 10 weeks before. So she did a lot of different ways of dealing with life compared to me.
Mm.
We slept with the TV on all night long, for example, things like that. But I've done really great. I really met some fantastic people through these events that
Yes.
were all in very similar stages. Like I stayed in a cabin with 8 other widows when we did whitewater rafting, zip lining, and hiking in West Virginia, for example.
Yeah.
And we connect, and we still are connected. And then we get to see how people grow and change, and we're there for each other. So like if you have somebody else that you've spent time with, you can say, oh my gosh, I just need somebody to talk to, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah. It's a reminder of the community that you're in, right? Because grief can be so lonely, so isolating, right? Relationships fall away. So to be surrounded by a community of people who have gone through very similar experiences, to know you're not alone, to know that that feeling or that question or that hard to talk about topic with other people in your life, you get these people who get it, right? They've lived it. They can walk alongside you. So I love that. Well, Andy, it's been such a pleasure hearing from your experience and what it's been like. I know this road has been hard for you. I know that we've only just touched on some of the challenges for you. Any last pieces of wisdom or advice that you feel would be helpful to share, especially for that early Gold Star widow who's just starting this journey themselves?
I would say the most important thing is don't be afraid to reach out to others, whether it's somebody at TAPS, your installation, another widow or widower or surviving family member that you've heard about, those financial professionals on installation. Like, get connected to the resources that are available to you because it will change how you move forward. They'll give you the peace that you need, or at least help you get some of the peace that you need to keep moving forward and make some good decisions, and just find the support. I also, one of the things that I know you and I have talked about before is I really like Grief Share. I know that's
Hmm.
not a military specific event, but I think it can be really helpful. I've done that twice myself, once early on and then once about a year later. And that was really helpful to think about that. Also, if you need a mental health professional, that's a great thing that you could do
Yes.
through TRICARE. Having somebody to talk to. It's not always easy to talk to people who have partners who are still alive. They sometimes don't understand, and it can feel uncomfortable talking about that with people. And so having other people to talk to who have gone through the same thing can be really helpful, and professionals that help people through as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for everything. We'll have a list of all these resources and show notes in the organizations so you can get connected with that. Know that you're not alone on this journey. So, Andy, last thing, where can people learn more about you specifically or contact you if they're interested to chat with you?
Well, I do have a website now, so you can go to andiwren.com, ANDIWRENN.com. Um, I teach financial professionals, so that'll take you to that. But you can always reach out to me through there. I'm on LinkedIn, Andy Madden Wren, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So Andy Wren, all over the place. I love helping people and supporting people and connecting people. So that's always great.
Thank you for the gift that you are. I know that you've been a help to so many people and you'll continue to do that. So, appreciate you sharing today. And listeners, thank you for sharing this time with us. We look forward to being able to help you in any way that we can here at Wise Stewardship Financial Planning. If we could be of resource as well, feel free to reach out through our website as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Widow Life and Money. Want even more resources and information on how to make better financial decisions along your grief journey? Go to www.wisestewardshipfp.com/WLM/EP7, where you'll find the specific resources from this episode. While there, you can also schedule a free, no obligation conversation with Daniel. If you enjoyed the content, please leave us a review and share with other widows who would also benefit from this information. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be used as the basis for legal, tax, or investing advice. Daniel Kopp is the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, LLC, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Opinions and information expressed are as of the date of recording and are subject to change. The views and opinions of guests on this program are not necessarily those of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning. Daniel and Wise Stewardship Financial Planning are not affiliated with guests or their business affiliates unless otherwise stated.